The cameras were rolling when Shedeur Sanders confronted Tony Grossi in that tunnel. The Cleveland Browns rookie quarterback, fresh off an electric preseason debut where he threw for 138 yards and 2 touchdowns, wasn't about to let the moment pass without addressing the elephant in the room. He looked the ESPN Cleveland radio host dead in the eye and said what had been building up inside him for months. "You only say negative stuff about me. I ain't do nothing to you." The video went viral instantly, racking up hundreds of thousands of views across social media. Analysts debated whether it showed maturity or immaturity. Colin Cowherd questioned Sanders' judgment. Bayless called it unprofessional. But in the middle of all that noise, one voice cut through the chaos with a perspective that hit different. Baker Mayfield, the former Browns quarterback who lived through his own war with that same Cleveland media, finally spoke up about Shedeur Sanders, and what he said was not what anyone expected. Before you go anywhere, hit that subscribe button, because this story is about more than just 2 quarterbacks. It's about legacy, pressure, redemption, and what happens when someone who's been through hell decides to reach back and pull someone else through before they drown. Let's go back to where this all began. April 25, 2025, the NFL Draft. Shedeur Sanders, the son of Hall of Fame cornerback Deion Sanders, was sitting in that green room watching his name not get called. First round came and went. Second round disappeared. Third round evaporated. By the time the Browns finally selected him in the 5th round with the 144th overall pick, the shock was palpable. This was a quarterback who many analysts had projected as a first-round talent, maybe even a top 10 pick. He had put up massive numbers at Colorado, throwing for over 3,000 yards in back-to-back seasons, leading the Buffaloes to bowl games, and doing it all under the microscope of having his father as his head coach. But on draft day, teams passed on him, over and over, and the whispers started immediately. He's too cocky. He's a product of his dad's coaching. He doesn't have elite arm talent. He can't handle pressure. He's all hype, no substance. The criticisms were relentless, and they didn't stop when he arrived in Cleveland. If anything, they got louder. Tony Grossi, the longtime ESPN Cleveland radio personality who has covered the Browns since 1984, became one of Shedeur's most vocal critics. Grossi questioned whether Sanders was even good enough to make the roster. He pushed back against the hype surrounding the rookie, arguing that Dillon Gabriel was the better quarterback prospect. He constantly reminded listeners that Sanders went 13-11 at Colorado, as if that somehow disqualified him from NFL success. And Shedeur Sanders heard every word. Fast forward to August 8, 2025, the Browns' first preseason game against the Carolina Panthers. Sanders got the start because both Kenny Pickett and Dillon Gabriel were dealing with hamstring injuries. Joe Flacco, the presumed starter for Week 1 of the regular season, was resting. This was Shedeur's moment, his chance to silence the doubters, and he delivered. 14 completions on 23 attempts for 138 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and a quarterback rating of 106.8. He even added 19 rushing yards on 4 carries, including a 10-yard scramble that showed off his mobility. The Browns won 30-10. It was the kind of debut that makes people stand up and take notice. Analysts who had written him off suddenly had to acknowledge his performance. Cleveland sports radio lit up with debate, and Shedeur Sanders, knowing full well that Tony Grossi had been one of his loudest critics, decided it was time for a conversation. The video from Well Off Media, run by Shedeur's brother, Deion Sanders Jr., captured the entire exchange in the tunnel after the game. Sanders approached Grossi, or according to Grossi's later account, Grossi called Sanders over to ask him another question. Either way, what happened next became instant social media gold. Sanders, pointing at Grossi but keeping his tone mostly playful, said, "Tony, I be hoping you got something positive to say about me. You only say negative stuff about me. And I'm like, I ain't do nothing to you. I ain't seen nothing positive that you ever said." Grossi's response wasn't audible on the video, but whatever he said made Sanders laugh. The exchange ended with Sanders walking away, still smiling, asking, "What I do to you, Tony?" It looked friendly enough, lighthearted even, but the internet doesn't do nuance. The takes came fast and furious. Colin Cowherd went on his show and questioned Sanders' maturity.
He said, "I do think Shedeur is a good kid. I question his judgment and maturity." Cowherd argued that Sanders should have been watching film instead of worrying about what local radio hosts were saying. He told Sanders to get out of there, stop watching Tony Grossi TikTok clips, and focus on football. Others piled on, saying it showed Sanders was too thin-skinned, too emotional, too focused on outside noise. Even some Browns fans, desperate for stability at the quarterback position, worried that their fifth-round rookie might be a distraction waiting to happen. But then Baker Mayfield spoke up, and everything changed. In an interview with USA Today in late August, just days after the Grossi confrontation went viral, Mayfield was asked about Sanders and what advice he'd give to the rookie navigating his first NFL season. Mayfield, now a Pro Bowl quarterback with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and fresh off leading Tampa to back-to-back NFC South championships, could have said anything. He could have stayed neutral, he could have avoided the question, he could have thrown a subtle jab at Sanders for being immature or for not handling the pressure better. But that's not what Baker Mayfield did. Instead, he showed a level of empathy, grace, and understanding that reminded everyone why, despite all his flaws and controversies, Mayfield has always been a fighter who understands what it's like to be doubted. "I mean, it's tough," Mayfield said. "Since he was young, he had the spotlight on him, so people are going to be overcritical of every little thing. The cliché, control what you can control. As a quarterback, that's how do you win football games and how do you elevate the guys around you. He has all the pieces he needs to have success. It's about the time and place." Read that again. He has all the pieces he needs to have success. That's not a throwaway line. That's Baker Mayfield, someone who battled his own demons in Cleveland, someone who was constantly criticized and eventually discarded by the Browns in favor of Deshaun Watson, telling Shedeur Sanders that he believes in him. It's validation from someone who knows exactly what Sanders is going through because he lived it himself. And Mayfield would know. When he was drafted first overall by the Browns in 2018, he arrived in Cleveland as the Heisman Trophy winner, the brash gunslinger from Oklahoma who planted flags at midfield and talked trash with the best of them. He was supposed to save the Browns, and for a while it looked like he might. In 2020, Mayfield led Cleveland to its first playoff victory in 25 years, beating the Pittsburgh Steelers in the wild-card round. He finished with 26 touchdown passes and just 8 interceptions that season. The city loved him, the fans believed in him, and then it all fell apart. The injuries piled up, the offensive coordinator carousel continued, and when the Browns had the chance to trade for Deshaun Watson, they didn't hesitate to move on from Mayfield, despite everything he had done for the franchise. It was brutal, it was public, and it was humiliating.
But here's the thing about Baker Mayfield. He didn't let it break him. He bounced around the league for a year, playing for the Panthers and the Rams, before landing with the Buccaneers in 2023. And in Tampa, he found the stability, the coaching, and the support system he never had in Cleveland. He threw for over 4,000 yards in 2023. He led the Bucs to the playoffs. He earned Pro Bowl honors. And in 2024, he did it all over again. Mayfield proved that the Browns were wrong to give up on him. He proved that he was more than the noise, more than the controversies, more than the criticisms. He proved that when given the right situation, he could be exactly what a franchise needed. So, when Mayfield speaks about Shedeur Sanders, it carries weight, because he's not just some talking head offering generic advice. He's someone who has been in Sanders' exact shoes. He knows what it's like to be doubted. He knows what it's like to have the media turn on you. He knows what it's like to deal with Tony Grossi's relentless criticism, because Grossi did the exact same thing to Mayfield during his time in Cleveland. The feud between Mayfield and Grossi was well documented. Grossi questioned Mayfield's maturity, his leadership, his decision-making. He criticized Mayfield publicly and frequently. And Mayfield, unlike Sanders, didn't always handle it with grace. He sometimes fired back. He sometimes let the noise get to him. and looking back, Mayfield probably knows that he could have handled things differently. Which is why his advice to Sanders is so powerful. Control what you can control. Don't worry about what the critics are saying. Focus on winning football games and elevating the guys around you. It's the kind of hard-earned wisdom that only comes from making mistakes, learning from them, and coming out the other side stronger. And Sanders, whether he realizes it or not, is incredibly fortunate to have someone like Mayfield speaking up for him. But Mayfield wasn't the only one comparing Sanders to his own journey. Analysts across the league started drawing parallels between the two quarterbacks. Both were polarizing figures before they even played a down in the NFL. Both faced criticism about their attitudes, their confidence, their readiness for the professional level. Both landed in Cleveland, a franchise with a long history of destroying quarterbacks and crushing hope. And both had to navigate the unique pressure that comes from playing for a fan base that is simultaneously desperate for success and conditioned to expect failure. William Roden of Anscape went as far as calling Shedeur a reincarnation of Baker Mayfield, saying that in terms of swagger and excitement creation, Sanders brings the same energy that Mayfield brought to Cleveland. That comparison is fascinating because it cuts both ways. On one hand, it suggests that Sanders has the potential to be electric, to captivate a fan base, to bring hope back to a downtrodden franchise. On the other hand, it's a reminder that swagger and excitement alone aren't enough. Mayfield had both in spades, and he still couldn't make it work long-term in Cleveland. The organizational dysfunction, the constant coaching changes, the lack of stability at key positions, all of it contributed to Mayfield's eventual departure. And Sanders is walking into the exact same situation. Kevin Stefanski, the head coach who was fired by the Browns in January 2026 and immediately hired by the Atlanta Falcons, is the same coach who was supposed to maximize Mayfield's potential, but never quite did. Stefanski went through 15 different starting quarterbacks during his coaching career, from Kirk Cousins to Baker Mayfield to Jacoby Brissett to Joe Flacco. And now, Shedeur Sanders is just another name on that list, trying to prove he deserves to be more than a footnote in Cleveland's endless quarterback carousel.
But here's where the story gets even more interesting. While Mayfield was offering words of encouragement to Sanders publicly, there was a fascinating subplot developing behind the scenes. Shiloh Sanders, Shedeur's brother, signed with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as an undrafted free agent in 2025, and during his time in Tampa, Shiloh got to practice alongside Baker Mayfield every single day. He saw firsthand what it takes to be a high-caliber NFL quarterback. He watched Mayfield's preparation, his film study, his practice habits, and according to Shiloh's own comments in June 2025, he was blown away. He said that practicing with Mayfield, Mike Evans, and Antoine Winfield Jr. made him realize that the game is just a game, and that mental preparation is most of the game and translates to you being good at football. Shiloh even admitted that whenever Shedeur called him from Cleveland, he would tell his brother about the little things Mayfield does that make him elite, like how he goes from check down to check down real fast, like how he reads defenses and makes decisions in real time. These are the kinds of details that don't show up on stat sheets, but make the difference between a good quarterback and a great one. And the fact that Shedeur has access to this information, filtered through his brother who is literally watching one of the best quarterbacks in the NFC practice every day, is an invaluable resource. It's like having a cheat code to understanding what it takes to succeed at the highest level. Meanwhile, back in Cleveland, Sanders' performance in that first preseason game put enormous pressure on the rest of the quarterback room. Kenny Pickett and Dylan Gabriel, who were both dealing with injuries, suddenly had to worry about a fifth-round rookie who looked more NFL-ready than either of them. After the game, Browns head coach Kevin Stefanski, who was still the coach at that point before getting fired, said the situations were invaluable for Shedeur and all of our offense. We got a 3rd and 1 where he had a quarterback sneak. There's just a lot of football, and that's by design, with him getting a ton of reps in this game, and he'll get a ton of reps next week as well. That's all part of our development of our young players. But Sanders' second preseason game against the Los Angeles Rams was a disaster. He completed just 3 of 6 passes for 14 yards and was sacked 5 times. He looked overwhelmed, out of sorts, and unprepared. Critics pounced. Suddenly, the narrative shifted from maybe this kid has something to he's overrated, he's a product of his dad's name, he was never that good to begin with. It was a brutal reminder that in the NFL, you're only as good as your last game, and for Sanders, his last game was a nightmare. Colin Cowherd, who had already questioned Sanders' maturity after the Grossi confrontation, doubled down on his criticism. He said that Sanders' physical tools are good enough to be a mid-tier NFL quarterback, comparing him to Dak Prescott. But Cowherd argued that Sanders isn't great at the physical side of the game. He's not Cam Newton, he's not Big Ben, he's not Josh Allen, he's not Matthew Stafford. So he's going to have to be better in the other 30 to 40% of quarterback play, which is maturity, focus, IQ, film study, and pre-snap excellence. Essentially, Cowherd was saying that Sanders' ceiling is limited by his traits, and if he doesn't become elite in the mental side of the game, he'll never be more than average. But Baker Mayfield's perspective offers a counter-argument to that narrative. Baker Mayfield himself isn't a physical freak. He's not 6'5" with a rocket arm. He doesn't run a 4.4 40-yard dash. But what Mayfield has is heart, toughness, and the ability to elevate the guys around him. And those are exactly the traits that Mayfield sees in Sanders. He has all the pieces he needs to have success. It's about the time and place. Translation, Sanders has the tools. Now he just needs the right organization, the right coaching staff, and the right opportunity to put it all together.
Unfortunately for Sanders, Cleveland might not be that place. The Browns are a franchise in constant turmoil. They've had 13 different head coaches since 1999. They've drafted countless quarterbacks, from Tim Couch to Brady Quinn to Brandon Weeden to Johnny Manziel to Baker Mayfield to Shedeur Sanders. And none of them, except Mayfield for a brief moment, ever found sustained success. The organizational dysfunction runs too deep. The front office makes questionable decisions, the coaching staff turns over too frequently, and the fan base, while passionate, is also traumatized by decades of losing. Scot McCloughan, the former general manager of Washington and San Francisco, appeared on the Pac-Man Jones show in May 2025 and offered a fascinating perspective on Sanders. McCloughan, who helped lead the charge on drafting Baker Mayfield when he was with the Browns, gave Sanders a first-round grade and said, "I think he'll be the best quarterback out of this draft. When it's all said and done, when his career is said and done, he'll be the best QB out of this draft." That's a bold statement, especially considering the 2025 draft class included other highly touted quarterbacks. But McCloughan, who also played a pivotal role in the Seattle Seahawks drafting Russell Wilson in 2012, sees something special in Sanders. McCloughan compared Sanders to Wilson, saying that both faced unfair criticism despite elite production in college. He recalled witnessing Sanders up close on the Colorado sideline and watching an interaction between Sanders and Travis Hunter that demonstrated Sanders' leadership. After Sanders threw an errant pass intended for Hunter, the frustrated receiver threw his hands in the air in disappointment. According to McCloughan, Sanders didn't let it slide. He got in Hunter's face and told him to never do that again. That's leadership. That's accountability. That's the kind of intangible quality that you can't teach. And McClellan's track record on evaluating quarterbacks gives his opinion serious weight. He was right about Mayfield, predicting that Mayfield would throw 40 touchdown passes years before it happened in Tampa Bay. He was right about Russell Wilson, fighting for the Seahawks to draft him despite his height concerns. And if he's right about Shedeur Sanders, then the Browns might have stumbled into a franchise quarterback in the 5th round. But as the 2025 season progressed, Sanders' role with the Browns remained unclear.
He started the year as the fourth-string quarterback behind Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, and Dylan Gabriel. By midseason, after Gabriel suffered a concussion against the Baltimore Ravens, Sanders finally got his shot. He stepped in and immediately confirmed the starting job for the remainder of the 2025 campaign. Head coach Kevin Stefanski, before he was fired, named Sanders the starter going forward. And just like that, the fifth-round pick, who was supposed to be a developmental project, became the face of the franchise's future. Fast forward to December 2025. Sanders, now the confirmed starter, faced the Buffalo Bills at home in Week 16. It was a tough matchup against Josh Allen and one of the best defenses in the league. The Browns lost 23-20, but Sanders showed flashes of brilliance. More importantly, he showed resilience. He took hits, he made plays, he kept fighting. And after the game, when reporters asked him about his future with the Browns heading into 2026, Sanders gave an answer that would have made Baker Mayfield proud. "I live in the present," Sanders said. "I'm focused on this week because nothing's promised going into next year or anything. I don't think it's about feeling a commitment, it's about controlling what you can control. I think I have to do my part and get some wins and play clean football. The rest isn't in my hands, so that's really all it is. I don't own the organization, so I can't promise anything will happen. You know, I'm not God."
Control what you can control. It's the exact advice Baker Mayfield gave him months earlier, and hearing Sanders repeat that philosophy shows that Mayfield's words resonated. Sanders isn't worried about the noise. He's not worried about Tony Grossi or Colin Cowherd or any of the other critics. He's focused on winning football games and proving that he belongs. And that mindset, more than any physical trait or stat line, is what gives him a real chance to succeed. By late December 2025, Sanders had started 3 games for the Browns and was preparing for a Week 17 matchup against the Pittsburgh Steelers. His passer rating of 72.6 wasn't elite, but interestingly, it was exactly the same as Baker Mayfield's rating at that point in the season. Mayfield, now a veteran Pro Bowl quarterback, was also sitting at 72.6. The parallel was uncanny. Both quarterbacks, at different stages of their careers, dealing with similar struggles, posting identical numbers. It was as if the football gods were reminding everyone that development isn't linear. Quarterbacks grow, they learn, they get better with time and experience. And judging Sanders based on a handful of starts in his rookie season would be as short-sighted as judging Mayfield based on his worst games in Cleveland. The relationship between Baker Mayfield and Shedeur Sanders is one of the most fascinating subplots in the NFL right now. They've never played together, they don't share an agent or a trainer, they're not childhood friends, but they're connected by something deeper, a shared understanding of what it's like to be doubted, criticized, and written off. They're connected by Cleveland, a city that chews up quarterbacks and spits them out. They're connected by Tony Grossi and the relentless Cleveland media that seems determined to find fault in every young quarterback who wears the orange and brown. And they're connected by their refusal to let any of that break them. Mayfield could have easily ignored Sanders. He could have stayed silent, focused on his own career, and let the rookie figure it out on his own. But that's not who Baker Mayfield is. Despite all the criticism, despite all the controversies, despite being labeled as immature and brash and difficult, Mayfield has always had a generous spirit when it comes to other quarterbacks. He's supportive, he's encouraging, he's willing to share what he's learned. And his words of support for Shedeur Sanders, delivered at a time when Sanders needed to hear them most, show a level of class and maturity that his critics claim he doesn't have. The NFL is a cutthroat business. Quarterbacks compete for jobs. Egos clash. Insecurities run rampant. But every once in a while, you get a moment like this. A moment where one quarterback reaches back to help another. A moment where someone who has been through the fire decides to offer a hand to someone still walking through the flames. Baker Mayfield's reaction to Shedeur Sanders is one of those moments, and fans won't forget it.
Because at the end of the day, this story isn't just about football. It's about humanity. It's about empathy. It's about recognizing yourself in someone else's struggle and choosing to speak up, to offer encouragement, to say you're not alone. Baker Mayfield didn't have to say anything, but he did, and what he said mattered. He has all the pieces he needs to have success. It's about the time and place. Shedeur Sanders is still writing his NFL story. He's still fighting for his place in this league. He's still proving that he belongs. And somewhere in Tampa Bay, Baker Mayfield is watching, rooting for him, and hoping that Sanders gets the time and place that Mayfield himself had to search so hard to find. Because if there's one thing Baker Mayfield knows, it's that talent alone isn't enough. You need the right opportunity. You need the right support system. You need people who believe in you when the world is telling you you're not good enough. And now, Shedeur Sanders has that. He has Baker Mayfield in his corner. He has his brother Shiloh feeding him insights from Tampa Bay. He has Scot McCloughan publicly declaring that he'll be the best quarterback from his draft class. He has former GMs, analysts, and teammates who see something special in him. And most importantly, he has himself. A kid who fell to the 5th round, heard all the doubts, confronted his critics face to face, and kept pushing forward. The Browns are a mess. The organization is dysfunctional. The coaching situation is uncertain after Kevin Stefanski got fired. The roster has holes everywhere. But Shedeur Sanders is still there, still fighting, still believing. And if Baker Mayfield's journey teaches us anything, it's that sometimes the people who get counted out are the ones who end up proving everyone wrong. This story is based on reports from USA Today, ESPN Cleveland, Yahoo Sports, Pro Football Network, Sports Illustrated, Newsweek, The Athletic, and various other outlets covering Shedeur Sanders' rookie season, Baker Mayfield's career, and the Cleveland Browns organization. Quotes from Baker Mayfield, Shedeur Sanders, Scot McCloughan, Colin Cowherd, and other sources are drawn from publicly available interviews and media appearances. The information represents the ongoing narrative as of late 2025 and early 2026.